Recording. Okay. Hello, everybody. It is a beautiful Wednesday here. The sun is shining, and welcome to the Elevate Academy. We're a place for student athletes, parents of student athletes, coaches, anyone who loves sports to get together and really gather to elevate each other during these crazy times. But we bring you some of the best coaches, athletes, influencers, business people, all who have a connection to the game of sports. And it's there to help you be the best that you can be in everything that you do. Our goal is to focus on the complete person. And for us, it's always mind, body, game, life. So buckle up, everyone. Let's elevate. Today, we have a great guest on the show. We have Liz Robertshaw. Liz is the executive director of the Intercollegiate Women's Lacrosse College Coaches Association. And prior to that, she was the head coach at Boston University, the Terriers. And she's a George Mason graduate, but she was also a two-time coach for Team USA, where they won 2 gold medals. So welcome to the show, Liz.
Thank you. My goodness. I don't know if I even live up to my own billing. That's awesome.
Well, that's, you know what, you're too modest. So that's a good thing. So listen, these are crazy times right now. Yeah. Where, are you in Connecticut or are you in Mass?
I'm in Massachusetts. I'm in my basement, as people can see. So I'm not good with virtual background. So I'm just going with the basement.
There's no virtual background here. I have the same background every single day. So you're in Mass.
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts was one of the first states to put state police at the borders, preventing any New Yorkers like myself from coming to Massachusetts. They were blocking us, social distancing to the extreme.
Yes.
But how are you guys doing during all this craziness?
Well, we're good. We're staying home still, so kind of living that up. In some ways, it's been challenging. Obviously, as everyone's dealing with these challenges, your life just kind of turns on a dime. We have, my wife and I have 2 small kids. One is 3.5. The other is about to turn 2. So for anyone that has young kids, we're in it. But it's kind of one of those things that it's become our new norm. So we understand it. I work down here in the basement and we work really hard to balance and spend time with the kids and also try to reset and not get too overwhelmed with things going on. But there's a lot, there's a lot going on in the world of lacrosse and the world in general. But I feel like I wouldn't just say we're just surviving. I think we're doing well. I feel very fortunate of the position that I'm in, to have a job, to be able to provide for my family, to be able to talk to coaches, to talk to prospective student athletes. So in a lot of ways, we're doing really well, given the circumstances.
That's great, though. I mean, we need that, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show was I want to be able to talk about student athletes. I want to talk about college. When are we going to see lacrosse? Yesterday, spent a lot of the day yesterday working on my computer, but had ESPNU on, so we had lacrosse on literally from 12 o'clock last night to probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. Watching great lacrosse, and we miss it, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's been the hardest part. Is you see it on TV. I did the same thing. I turned it on, and the BC Hofstra game was on for women, and I was like, I'm watching it. I knew the outcome. I already watched it, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to see them compete.
I know, it was great to watch. My only complaint, though, was they put on all these men's games, and all of the men's games that they put on, I think, were 1-goal games where they were literally exciting 1-goal games. And the 2 games they put on, they had Carolina blowing out Louisville and BC against Hofstra. But I would have liked to have seen the even though Carolina lost, I would like to have seen the Carolina BC replay of the semifinal game from last year, which was one of the greatest lacrosse games I've ever been to.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, trust me, we're trying to make some phone calls and trying to push as gently as we can push and be persistent. But there are some awesome NCAA games that went on, over the past couple of years, whether they're championship, semifinal, first and second round games on the women's side that have been amazing. I want to see those. I mean, put on the Stony Brook, Maryland game from a couple years ago. And like you said, that the BC Carolina game, that was unreal. Put those on. So maybe they're saving up for Memorial Day weekend. We're working on it. We'll hope. So we'll see.
Well, they also, some exciting news came out yesterday. I don't know if I know that, some of your good friends like Jen Adams, and Jen is very close with Julie Foudy. But the 99ers movie is actually just got picked up by Netflix. one of the first guests that we had on the show was Ross Greenberg. Ross was the former president of HBO Sports. He was the executive producer of Miracle, and Ross is the executive producer of the 99ers.
Love it.
So, and I'm trying to think of I got to look because I texted him earlier, and the name of it is, I think it's Girls of Summer.
Oh boy.
And that's going to be just super exciting. I think it's awesome for women's sports to have something of that magnitude now made into a full feature film that Netflix is going to fund.
Yeah, I mean, you're just seeing the growth. Everything has been so amazing. I can't wait to see it. I love the 99ers. I grew up in that time period watching them. And they're so inspiring, and having conversations with some of those people, whether it's Christine Lilly, who I crossed over with at Boston University, or Julie Foudy, who we tried to do that introduction with Jen Adams to get her going at the Leadership Academy. They're great people. They are role models. And you see the impact they had on the lives of people like Kylie O'Miller and Taylor Cummings and Meg Dowdy. And now they're passing it forward. So it's just so cool. I can't wait to see more of it. And it's great.
I don't know if you had a chance to watch, but we had one of our guests on the show was Anson Dorrance, who's the UNC, women's coach. He's won 21 national championships. And I had to ask him because, I mean, I have talked about it. Mia Hamm's one of my favorite athletes of all time. And I just love her. I think she's so classy. She's such a fiery competitor. And, she just, as a dad, she's such a great role model that you can have your girls look up to or your players look up to. And I always talk about the quote about, what is the definition of a true champion? And he told the story. And I never knew the entire story, but he randomly was passing by their practice field, which he never went that way. And he saw Mia Hamm out on the field doing wind sprints on her own with a soccer ball at her feet. And he wrote her a note. And that note was, the definition of a true champion is someone bent over, drenched in sweat at the brink of exhaustion when no one's looking. But he was looking. And he wrote her that note, and that note ended up, and that was it. He nothing big about it, but that note ended up being in her book. So
I mean, stuff like that gives me chill. Like, I literally have chills hearing about it, because I have read Anson's book and I watched that webinar. What he's done and what he creates at North Carolina. I mean, it's I don't even deserve to be on the same webinar podcast situation you have going on here as him, because he's at a whole other level. But who he worked with, I mean, my goodness, those women, those competitors. I've been lucky enough to be around a Christine Lilly, like I said, when I was at BU, and she would, she'd be working out in the gym alongside of our kids. And some of our best players to ever play at Boston University, Sarah Dalton, who was an All-American for us, she worked out next to Christine Lilly and was just starstruck. And the whole time Christine's like, let's go, let's do another.
How great is it, for them to be able to see that? And that's, I think, one of the cool things is when as athletes, I know, Mia Hamm has come in and spoken to the UNC women's lacrosse team. And, so that the cross-pollination of these great athletes. And, and I think I've said it on every show, I'm absolutely 1,000,000% addicted to the Michael Jordan documentary that ESPN
oh my God,
is doing right now. And it just, I try to explain to people, like my daughter's boyfriend was a huge LeBron fan, and now he's looking at it, he's like, now I know why people say Michael Jordan was the best.
Yeah.
And, but it's all about, athletics. Now, you switched gears. So you went from the sidelines, coaching, daily preparation with the kids. Now you're in a different role. You're working with all the college coaches, both Division 1, 2, 3. Do you also work with club programs as well, or?
Not currently, although what we've noticed throughout this time period is that there's an opportunity to do more of that kind of cross communication and bridging that gap and being, we don't want to say that we're the voice. We want to say that we are a voice and we're in this together. So, we're looking to up that. Actually, I had a great conversation with someone today about hosting a town hall for club coaches, and I'm excited about it. We'll be releasing that soon.
I'm talking about the club programs, the college club programs, like the WCLA.
So WCLA, no, but the NAIA we do. So we do all Division 1, 2, and 3 of the NCAA, head and assistant coaches, director of operations, everyone there on your staff. And then we do the NAIA, which again has about 40 schools right now, just under 40. And we're looking to continue growing that, which is awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things too is, when we're out there, we're talking to kids and, we're working with so many different programs, just not only my own, but programs throughout the country.
Yeah.
Is Division One. You're a Division One coach. You also coach at the highest level of Team USA. Division One is not for everyone,
Correct.
and that kids should be looking at. I always say, what's the best academic fit for you?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to hear from them. What's the best academic?
Yeah, and I think there's so many components to when you're making that decision. I think you're spot on. Academics, one, where are you going to do well academically? I've seen some kids that kind of bite off more than they can chew. And if you're up for that challenge, do it. Go for it. Challenge yourself. Some kids, if it's going to be a struggle for 4 years, if you're going to be unhappy, if you're not going to make it work, then you need to think about that. So what academically is good for you? And if you know your major too, then go towards that route. This is to prep you for a job. But I also think it's the fit and the feel. You have some of these kids that want a big program. They want big time football. They want big time lacrosse or just a big environment. And you have others that don't. Others that want a smaller, more intimate setting. They want to be able to play 2 sports. They want to be able to do internships. They want different things. They want to be in different parts of the country. And so I think all of those things are so important, more than just the lacrosse component. And you say it, you guys teach the total package of the individual, of the student athlete. That's what they should be looking for in their college experience as well. So it is a total package, the commitment level, the time on the field, what's going to be asked of you, all of those things play in. And I think sometimes they get overlooked because it's like just about a name, or just saying, oh, I have to go D1, when, man, there are some D2, D3 schools out there that they not only could hang, they would beat a good handful of Division I programs.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the unique things with lacrosse. I always say is lacrosse. If you take one of the top D3 programs or one of the top even D2 programs,
Mm-hmm.
They're going to compete with some of the really good,
Yes.
Division I programs, and probably in some cases, they'll beat a lot of the lower level programs because of the high skill level. You don't see that in other sports. You don't see that really in basketball and football and stuff like that, because there really is a progression. Here's D1, here's D1, 1AA, all the way down, and the talent literally goes that way. That's not the case in lacrosse. And I use my own nephew as a great example. It came down to 2 schools for him. It came down to Furman with a scholarship or Bates, Division III. And he asked me, I said, it's not even a question. Bates is a harder school to get into.
Yes.
It's got a 21% acceptance ratio, where Furman has about a 60% acceptance ratio. You use the sport to get you into a school that you might have been harder to get into. And, you came from a program with BU where I always would talk about conferences. Mm-hmm. And I thought that because academically, so for me, the number 1 conference was the Ivies. Yeah. The number 2 conference was the Patriot League, which you were part of. And, you were kind of new coming into the Patriot League. BU and Loyola and Navy and West Point eventually all came into that conference and formed one of the best academic conferences. But I always said the reason why I like the Ivies and the Patriots the most is because they're the only 2 programs where the academic index gets factored in, which is your SAT scores, your GPA, all of that gets factored in. And that entire incoming class of kids, they have to meet a standard. Yeah. Not all schools have that.
Right. And it's funny when you're sitting in the seat of a coach, sometimes you're cursing that academic index. I'm not going to lie to you, because there's some players out there you'd love to have on your roster. But at the end of the day, it all went back to bringing in students that could do the work at BU. Not only could they play at the level we wanted to play and compete at the level we wanted to compete, but they were able to do the coursework at BU, which wasn't easy. And you're right, in terms of the Patriot League and the Ivy League, they will challenge you. And there's a reason that they are some of the top academic, conferences in the country.
Yeah, and then I always said NESCAC is number 3 for me, because in some cases I think it might be harder to get into a NESCAC right now than it is to get into the Ivies.
I have some friends that are coaches at NESCACs, and they would agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, an Ivy coach will, he or she may get, say 7 or 8 slots a year that, once they take a kid through, they go through the pre-admissions and they lock those kids in, and those kids are basically going to get in as long as they don't screw anything up.
Right.
But now NESCAC only gets like 2 or 3, and you really got to get in on your own.
And to be honest, the timeline even is so much more pushed back. So an Ivy League school can tell you a little earlier, again, as long as you don't screw up, as long as you hit the benchmarks I'm asking you to hit, the chances of you getting in here are very good. It's still admissions based, but it's very good. NESCACs have to wait. You know, they can't commit kids as early.
Yes.
For the most part. They're waiting.
For a second, because you're so familiar with it too, because, just, obviously being in the business, but, the 21s, the 2021s, the kids who are looking to go into the NESCACs and the Division threes, they really wouldn't even be talking to coaches until right about now, because those coaches would need their end of year junior academics. So,
yeah. There's a couple, I will say there's a little bit of variation with some of those schools. As you said, the NESCACs, you're waiting. I mean, they're watching you, they're tracking you, your academics, your athletics, they're watching all the different sports you play. There are a couple schools, some of those top tier schools that maybe that are not in the NESCACs that can commit kids earlier. So they may be moving a little bit earlier, but for a lot of those NESCAC programs, this is right on target for when because like you said, they need your academics to see if you could fit.
So obviously we have a lot of people that, this is, and I say, unfortunately my wife's uncle passed away during this pandemic, and, they said he had coronavirus, and it's a very strange time. We're dealing with life and death and stuff like that. And I have two family members, my daughter Victoria, who I brought on the show yesterday for the first time to talk about her battle with Lyme disease. And so she's got an immune system that's compromised. And my mom's 93 and she's got an immune system that's compromised. So all of this is scary, and we are dealing with life and death, but I don't want to take away from those kids, the 2020s who, are in high school right now, and they just missed out on, for the kids in New York and the kids who I coach and my high school team and all the training, these kids have missed out their entire senior season. You had some teams down in Georgia and the Florida teams and Tennessee in high schools who, got 6 or 7 games in, and they played a little bit. But the New York teams, they didn't get any games in, and they didn't get to play. And it's really hard on them. And now you take a 21 who was really looking forward to using this junior year to help them get recruited, and then go into the summer, and now they're really nervous. Yeah. What can you say to those 2021s who are not recruited right now, who want to play college lacrosse?
If you want to play, you can play. I mean, I have talked to, I'm not even exaggerating now, hundreds of coaches, of our coaches, assistants, heads, everything, all different levels, all different conferences, and they are all still looking. And it's different. It's hard. They're not going to be able to necessarily go on a field and watch you play right now. There's a possibility towards the end of the summer they may get to, or even this fall. So I don't know. We're waiting on the NCAA to come back with that. But if you want to go, this kind of goes back to that, how bad do you want it? And I think of that in terms of my generation. I am way older than any of the players now. But when I look back at me going through the college process, it was how bad were you willing to fight for a spot at a school that you wanted to attend? And, sometimes those schools came after you. Sometimes they didn't. If you had your heart set on going to a certain school and you wanted to make it happen, make it happen. So this is where I think the grit is going to come in a little bit more for the 2021s. For their parents, I'm going to tell them they're going to have to breathe. They're going to have to just chill out and breathe, which is really hard as a parent. I'm just learning that with my young ones. But
Jenny Levy told them they all need to be flexible.
Well, they do. I mean, there has to be, hey, we're going to see how things go. It may be a situation where you're applying to more schools than you thought, that you weren't committed, quote unquote, before you decided. It may be you're not sure how it's going to look. And we're working through that. Our coaches are working through that. The NCAA is working through that. And for you guys, as those 21s, they're just going to have to kind of go with it. As you're saying, Dave, do the research on the academics of a school. How high can you aim? How high do you think you can get in? Now bring that lacrosse component in there and use every tool in your toolbox that you may have. I mean, if it's video from last year, everything.
One thing that we've been hammering is the academics. And we did a little study with, we have our own SAT, ACT prep program that we created.
Awesome.
And we created with a national company, but we geared it towards athletes. And what's amazing is the athletes who actually go through this, on average, what we're seeing is they go up 150 points on the SAT and they go up 3 points on the ACT.
They should all be doing that.
hammer that right now. That's like,
They should all be doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, every kid out there, this is the better you are academically, the more doors you will open. I mean, it's a fact. I'm not even just trying to say it to make every parent happy, but the better your grades look, the better your testing scores look. And even though now schools are going more test optional because of what's happened with the SATs, but then they're looking at your grades, so they matter. They really matter.
You're still going to differentiate yourself, because even if it's from a, if it's a coach, having to take your file and bring that to an admissions officer, and whether you had to take the test or not, and you have the same grades as that other kid, and one kid didn't take the test, and they look and go, this kid did really well on the SAT, even though we're not making it a requirement. They're better.
They're going to take you. They're totally going to take you. Yes. Yeah.
So then we jump into the 2022s. And for the 2022s, the message that I'm trying to convey to the 22s, and this is with all the kids that I work with, is you're all in the same boat. No one has an advantage. There's no 2022s that are being seen right now. So besides what I just said, what else do you have to say to the 2022s that are out there?
I think this is an opportunity for you to really do your homework on schools and see where they want to look. I think what tends to happen, having watched this recruiting process for 20 years and been a part of it, is that sometimes I would hear kids say, well, I'm interested in the schools that are interested in me. And it's like, I get that, but right now as a 2022, since you're all in the same boat and coaches haven't gotten the chance to see most of you, go out and look at the schools that you want to look at. Take this opportunity. Instead of hanging out on Netflix watching Tiger King, go online and check out the different schools and know how much they're going to cost, and know what their admissions rates are, and know, their programs, look at their rosters, and do some of your homework so that you're prepared, so that, that part of your game is solid. And then again, as all you coaches are telling people, which is great, keep your game sharp. You never know when you're going to get back out there. If you can film, if you can film yourself doing some stuff, people like to see it. Everyone's looking for something, so do it.
Every night, I don't know how many nights it's been so far, but I'm going to say probably 30. At least one member of my family, if not, 2 to 5 of us, we go to the hospital every night and we cheer on the nurses. My mom was a nurse for 40 plus years, and the doctors and the frontline workers, and so we go and cheer them. And so last night, as we were sitting out with our signs, and my wife's got a little hand tambourine, and there's this woman Laura, who comes with us every night, and she's got her bell and holding up signs. One of my 2024s passed by, and she stopped the car. She's like, "Oh, Coach K, I miss you so much. I haven't seen it." And I'm like, I know, I can't wait to get out there. And she's like, I'm running every day. So I'm like, I love that. I'm like, make sure you have your stick in your hand, all these little things that, we took for granted for so long. Yeah. But now it's like, okay, when we do come out of it, you got to be ready.
Yes.
So if you're not doing your homework, if you're not working hard, you're going to get passed by.
And that's why I bring it back to that grit component. So if you really want this, if you really want it, then you'll keep yourself ready, so that when that time does come, you're going to be ready for, whether, again, it might just be a practice. It might be a filmed practice that gets to a coach because they can't travel. They're across the country and can't travel and see you. You never know what that opportunity is, so you have to be ready for it. And the same thing, you'll see it. I know all your kids that have gone on to colleges from Team Elevate, some of them have started since day one. Some of them have had to work their way on the field, and you never know when that call is going to happen for you to step on the field. So who's ready? This is a great chance to showcase that.
Well, we had Tom Ryan was on the show last, and Tom was a wrestler, a Long Island kid, went to Syracuse for 2 years, then transferred to Iowa, and lost in the national championship, took second and third. And, that was really hard for him to swallow, becoming second and third. But the one thing that he had to overcome, which he talked about, which was just, no parent should ever have to do it, was his son was 5 years old and had a heart attack and died, in his wife and with his wife and him being there. And, so Tom's gone on now and has really refocused his life. He's very spiritual. But one of the things that he was saying is, the best kids that I have the best kids on my team, I don't have to tell them to do anything.
Yeah.
They're already doing it themselves. They're the hardest workers. He's using wrestling. He's like, I don't have to ask them, pick up your singlet. Their singlet's already put away. It's in their locker. The locker's neat. They don't get a phone call from the professors saying, hey, this kid hasn't been in class the last 2 sessions. Not once. Those are the kids that separate themselves. They're self-starters. That's the things that they're doing. You know, look, I want to switch gears a little bit and almost go back to your college coaching days. What were the key characteristics that you were looking for in potential recruits that you would say, this is what I need for my team?
Yeah. You know, obviously it's going to vary per position, but the number one thing that I've said to every coach when they ask what I'm looking for, when I walk up to a field, I need to see you within the first 3 minutes of the game. It doesn't matter if it's a ground ball, a draw control, your voice, your positivity, making a save, your speed, your hustle, but I need to see you. If I'm sitting there for more than 5 minutes, and usually, I'm not going to lie, 5 minutes was always my cutoff, and I'd usually be standing next to, you know, Coach Freed. We'd be chatting. But if we had to search for you after 5 minutes, I mean, then I'm like, what am I going to do with you? I'm going to have to prod you to make a play. And when you're trying to get one of my spots, I want to see who's going to make a play. So that was one of the main things. I definitely think the hard work ethic, I wanted to see it. And then something that was always big for me, and I know it's become more important for a lot of coaches, it is kind of that vibe that someone is giving off. Are they a positive teammate? And it doesn't mean that you're going to be happy all the time. It doesn't mean that you're always going to be in a good mood, but will you push your teammates? Will you challenge them? Will you look to make them better? If they're struggling, do you help them? Or do you be like, meh, good luck? You mentioned The Last Dance. You know, I'm watching that, and I'm seeing everything that Michael Jordan was doing, and it wasn't always nice, but it was needed. And some people get turned off by that, but I'm like, hey, he wanted to win, and he wanted his teammates to come along for the ride, so he challenged them. So I love that.
No doubt.
Yeah, I love it. But I think some of those things, and then just the character of the kid, you know, I always said to them, like, don't lie to me, because if you lie to me, then it's just gone. So I wanted to have kids that it wouldn't always be comfortable if we had to have some of those conversations both ways, but we would be honest. Because if I'm going to be honest with them, which I always feel like I was with my student athletes and with everyone I deal with, I'm honest with you. You're not always going to like what I'm saying, but you're going to hear, you know, where I'm coming from, and I want to have the same. And so I look for that in a lot of the kids. You know, I know in recruiting some of your kids, awesome kids. I mean, we named my son after one of your players, Ryan Gaffney, just because of the light that kid brought to the field, how hard she worked, and that, you know, she was willing to do anything for a teammate. And I'm like, oh, that's what you want to be around. It's a kid that you want to be around for the next, not just 4 years, but 40, because I feel like I'm in their lives for the entirety. So it's important.
Yeah, well, I think all of those things, and that's why I think, you know, we personally as a program, we love multi-sport athletes. Yes. You know, we want kids to play a ton of other sports, and in some cases, that of the sport, you might not be the superstar. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of interesting when they have to play a different role. Are you much more in a support role, and are you okay being in that support role? But it's what can you do as a leader, maybe in that different role. So you might not be the best player, you know, you might be, you know, the best lacrosse player, but you might be just an average basketball player, but can you be the player to help everyone else get better?
Yeah.
You know, will you coach me?
I don't know if you deal with this, Dave, but when you bring up the multi-sport thing, something that I thought was interesting in my last couple of years of coaching that I heard is that more and more kids, if they weren't going to be the star, they were deciding just to quit that sport. You know, and I look, I shake my head too, because I feel like I was a very good soccer player in high school. I was an average basketball player. I was just aggressive, which go for that. And then I was a pretty good lacrosse player. But it was so funny to me, like it wasn't even an option of me not playing all three, because I loved them and I just loved competing. Like I loved competing. And it's interesting when I talk to kids and I'm like, oh, are you playing soccer this season? Are you playing basketball? And they're like, no, because I don't know if I'm gonna be on varsity, and I, you know, I sit the bench and it's not fun for me, so I just kind of quit. And I'm like, wait, what? Huh?
Right.
Huh?
Well, you know what's interesting is I only quit one time. I quit football, so I went to Brown, and you talk about the recruiting process. My recruiting process was definitely different because I had committed to West Point
Oh,
in my senior year in late October. I think it was late October, early November. I forget the date, but I remember it was the first time that West Point was playing Air Force on a night game at West Point on national TV. And I was getting recruited to play both football and lacrosse there. So I went up there on a Friday, took a bus, got there. I stayed with the lacrosse captain Friday night. They won the game on Saturday. I stayed with the football captain the next night, and I committed on Sunday to the coaches. No one else there, no one from my family. My mom wasn't there, and I'm like, "Yep, this is
God.
where I want to go." And then I went to Brown on my recruiting trip, my last recruiting trip. I wasn't even going to go, and my coach was like, "They really like you. You should just go. You never know." And I fell in love with the school.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. I wanted to play both. I wanted to play football and lacrosse. And back then, the uniqueness was in the Ivy League, they had a rule you had to play freshman football. You couldn't play varsity as a freshman. And they had it in other sports, but slowly football was the last sport to actually have it. And I was captain of my freshman team at Brown, and I loved my team, but I hated the coach. And it was the first time in my life where I had a coach who was verbally abusive, and he would make fun of me all the time. The amount of times he called me a dumb Pollock, and I'm like, I got a 98 average at Chaminade, which are the best schools on Long Island. I'd probably lose the dumb Pollock thing.
Yeah.
But he just made me hate it, and I quit. And I always look back on that and said, God, why did I let him win? But I ended up wrestling too for 2 years. And so I did 3 sports. But what's unique about, not quitting is, I tell everyone, I played professional lacrosse. I played for the New York Saints, and I played for the Bridgeport Barrage. Here's the beauty of it. I never got in a single game ever. In all of my years playing with both teams, I played 2 years with the Saints. I played 2 years with Bridgeport Barrage. I never got in a game. Didn't step on the field one time. Made every practice. And I thought one of my roles was, I'm going to try to make the guys who I'm playing against better. That's my job.
Yeah.
So don't quit.
Yeah. And you never know where it's going to take you. I just think there's something of, it's not easy. And that's the beauty of sports. I think people sometimes don't love that part. I love that sports are hard. I love it. I hate it when I'm in it. Don't get me wrong. I hate the moment I'm in it and I'm struggling. I hate it when I get on my Aerodyne bike in my garage. It's like, I hate it when I'm doing it. And then you get done and you're like, I did that. Like, I did that. There's just there is a little bit of that pride of like, hey, it sucked when I was doing it, but you know what? I did it. And it is something you feel that you accomplished. Well, obviously there are moments that some people need to make that decision. And that's I totally understand that. If you don't have passion for it, if this is really like if you dread going to something every single day because it's not your passion, then especially in the college level, I get it, and professional, obviously. But it's those kids that like you said, let someone else win. Like, nah.
Yeah. But, and that's another thing. You brought up the point of like, there's a spot for everyone to play. And, one of my players, Cassie Baldino, I had her at Holy Trinity. She was a good player, 3-year player for me. And she went to Stony Brook University, and she's the president of the Stony Brook women's club team.
Oh, wow.
And
awesome.
As someone who, when I was at Merrill Lynch, I only hired ex-athletes. That's who I hired. Those are the people that I wanted to work for me, work with me, because I knew everything that they had gone through in their years. I look at someone like Cassie, and yes, she's not playing Division 1, 2, or 3, but in her role as president of that club, she has to handle travel. She has to handle the schedule. She's doing all other things that most kids don't even have to think about. They just show up, play, get coached, and do things. So there's those opportunities as well. Don't just think, hey, I don't want to play. But the other thing that I think is so important, and you as a coach, I want to just get your take on it.
Yeah.
I went to college. I was the first one in my family to ever go away to college, go to a 4-year school. And I was so homesick. I was so homesick, horribly homesick. And I wanted to leave Brown. What kept me there was my team, this new family that I had. So the one thing I always try to explain to kids is that when you're a part of a team and you're coming into a school, you're already at an advantage. What's the advantage for an athlete to be part of that team?
You like you said, it for freshmen, it's that you have eyes looking at over you, and you have people that have been there before. I was one of those kids, same thing. First 6 months of school, I was like, get me out of here. Like, I want to go home. I'm done. I made the wrong choice. Mom and dad, can I transfer? They're like, no, suck it up for at least a year and then we'll talk. But it was one of those situations that when I look at coaching, we would always have our upperclassmen, be assigned. This is your freshman. Make sure you keep eyes on them. And then for the young ones, they'd have someone to ask questions of, were you homesick? Like, am I normal feeling this way? Or what should I do? This professor hates me. And you're like, they don't hate you. Just show up to class and they'll like you better. But you just have an automatic support system that you walk in with. And you have it from like an adult standpoint with your coaches, because you can always go to them, although sometimes that's scary. But you have it with the 20 some other young women that are on your team, because they've all been there. Right. I have yet to find one kid that never thought about transferring. Everyone does it. And it's usually in the first month, everyone's like, woo, college, awesome. And then month 2 hits and it's like, I'm homesick. I got my first C. Maybe your high school relationship broke up. Like, there's something that happens that you're like, I'm going home, I'm throwing in the towel. And it just, the team really helps to be like, calm down. We've all been there. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
The other thing I think that's also unique for athletes, and, I'd love to talk about it because, whenever we would go visit colleges and we would go see BU as one of our colleges that we would always go see in when we were hitting the Boston, New England area, was people need to understand the other huge advantage you have is that as an athlete, you have these academic advantages that other kids don't have.
Yeah.
Scheduling, right? So you guys would work with professors and academic advisors to make sure that their schedules would fit for both practices and travel.
And it was funny because, so you have that, and the priority scheduling for a lot of schools have that, and I think that's fantastic. It helps you kind of arrange your day, which is great. The tutors, the accessibility to tutors, having people help you with things, I think that's huge. I think the other part of it is just someone kind of making sure you're on path to graduation. Because as a general student, I remember I worked at Brown and loved it. I love my experience at Brown, amazing school. And you'd see sometimes some of the kids would flounder because they didn't know which way they wanted to go or how they wanted to kind of stay on course to graduation with so many options. And our student athletes could at least find someone to talk to about that. And because it is daunting.
Every team has an academic advisor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you go and you talk.
Mentors.
Yes.
You have access to the tutors.
Mm-hmm.
You also, all the freshmen, I know at BU all the freshmen had mandatory study hall.
Oh, yeah. They didn't like it, but they had it. Yes.
Right, but what does that do? It keeps them on track.
Yes. And that's the key thing. I think that's where just the overarching of like, we're going to keep you on path to graduation and help you. Because when you get to college and you get that course book, and the course book has, 800 classes you could potentially take, it's so overwhelming. And yes, you talk to someone about it, but then you're like, well, should I take it? Should I not? What should I do? And so having an academic advisor that could be like, all right, Riley, which way do you want to go with this? Where are we going? What's our end game? And as many people find out, some kids come into college saying, I'm going to be a business major. This is what I'm doing. I'm only going business. They failed their first business class. I'm like, I'm getting out of there. And then you have to pivot. And it's really challenging to pivot when you can't talk to someone about it. And so I think that's where, you have that resource that will help you get back on path to graduation.
Yeah, and I would tell you, even at Brown, we did not have all those resources that other D1 schools had. We didn't have access to tutors and stuff like that. And all these schools do, and and that's just a huge advantage for you as an athlete. Even for me, I went to Brown as a bio pre-med major with the hope of going to medical school. Jeez. And that's why when I was looking at West Point and Navy, it was, hey, I was going to be able to go, and all the coaches knew that I wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. And I would have to make a 7-year military commitment in order to go through the med school program and then serve a number of years working as a doctor. And then when I got to Brown, I'm like, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then now it's a pivot. I saw a recent study with Princeton had done. 51% of all the undergraduates at Princeton University changed their major once. Of the 51% that changed their major once, 52% of them changed it a second time. So, these things, it's okay to be able to change and want to change, but to have access to people who can help you with that, that's one of the benefits of being an athlete as well.
Yeah.
I can't talk about that enough. So now we got to talk about the summer.
Yeah.
And, talk about, obviously IWCLA, typically has run the best tournaments in the country. It's the most attended by college coaches, et cetera. And now IWCLA has pulled out.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at all these parents want to know, okay, what's going to happen?
I know. And it was one of the hardest decisions I know. I was like, it's an interesting dynamic because what happened this summer is one of the hardest decisions had to made, but at the same time, and I'm not putting this lightly or but also one of the easier decisions we've had to make, because as we're seeing the world around us, I mean, there's so much unknown, and to kind of be smack dab in the middle of the unknown and putting potentially people at risk, that's not something that we as coaches felt comfortable with, especially for our own members. It's been hard. I'm not going to lie. I took over this job in January, and did I think I'd be sitting in the seat? What were a pandemic, canceled tournaments? No, I didn't think we'd be having any of these things, but we are. And so we're adjusting. In terms of the summer, right now, today, the NCAA Division I Council is actually discussing whether the recruiting period is going to continue. The recruiting dead period is going to push further into the summer. Most are thinking yes. We don't know how long. I know basketball just came out and is promoting it through July. Our association had something different, as did some of the others. So we'll see what they come up with. But it's just such a challenging time. I think there's anxiety out there, and I understand it. My coaches are anxious. I get it. They want to get out recruiting, but at the same time, they're like, can I travel? Can I fly? Am I allowed? I just talked to another coach, and she's finding out today whether her program will be in existence. And I'm like, oh God. So when you hear that, there's so much going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the hard things too. I know I speak to so many coaches literally on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And there are coaches where their schools are basically preventing them from traveling out of state.
Yes.
And people need to understand that. But once again, we have to be flexible. We have to be creative. You got to differentiate yourself. But guess what? No matter what you do in life, that's what you have to do anyhow.
Yeah.
At Merrill Lynch, if you wanted to be the top person at Merrill Lynch, one of my favorite mentors at Merrill Lynch was a woman who ran the entire New York City district. She differentiated herself from everyone. And I just remember it was how she dressed, how she carried herself.
Yeah.
When she walked into a room, you knew she was in that room. There was a presence. And she was one of my favorite mentors ever. And she's the only female mentor that I've ever had.
Wow.
But she differentiated herself every step of the way to where she put herself as one of the elite women of Merrill Lynch. I look at certain people, like I look at Lisa Caputo, who's the executive vice president of Travelers, lacrosse player and field hockey player from Brown. She has differentiated herself in everything that she has done. And, we did a women's power conference where she came and spoke. And it's just like when you listen to her words and her advice, it's no different than the recruiting process that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Differentiate yourself, stand out from the crowd, do the things that will make you look better. And not just to look better, do them because you want to do them.
Right.
Have sincerity in there.
Well, and I do think even on top of that, as you're differentiating yourself, there's part of it is also how do you attack it? What's your mindset in attacking it? We've talked to some coaches who, and again, everything is valid, so I'm not trying to take anything away from anyone. But the woe is me, what are we going to do? Like, we got to put our head in the sand. This is all over. And having that kind of the doomsday mentality, what's that going to bring you? And so for us, it's kind of, hey, we make a decision, you move forward. The biggest thing is taking the time to make great decisions, whether it's recruiting, whether it is your college choice, where you're going to go, and then going, move forward and just keep chart that path and find the positive. I think that's something too, that the people that I want to be around, whether in this role or when I was in a college coach and looking for kids, I wanted kids that decision was made, let's go. Like, let's move, let's go forward. It wasn't like, ooh, what if, and if this, and I don't know if I can do that. And that uncertainty, that hesitation will get you.
One thing I wanted to ask you, and, I don't know if you'll be able to have, a set pat answer for it, but
Yeah.
one thing you've seen on the guys' side of the game, and you saw this for years, kids who maybe were unsure of where they wanted to go to college or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I had so many friends that went to Nassau Community College and did 2 years at Nassau, played unbelievably high-level lacrosse,
Mm-hmm.
and then transferred. There were a ton of guys who I know who transferred to schools like Cornell and
Mm-hmm.
Virginia and great schools. How come we don't see that on the women's side?
It's interesting. I haven't thought about it from like the junior college and up, but I thought about it being in New England where PGing years was new to me. I never heard about it until I got up here to New
I
England.
didn't know what a PG was until I got to Brown.
Seriously,
I didn't know what a prep school was until I got to Brown.
No, I didn't. I'm from Philly, and I was like, what are you guys talking about? Like, what is this stuff? And then you get up here, and people are like, oh, I'm taking a PG year. I'm like, cool, what's that? And so you learn about that. And only in my second half of my coaching career did it become more socially acceptable for women to do it, for young women to do it, because it was like, oh, my son will do it. He's just not advanced yet. If he wants to go play pro, if he wants to go play big time hockey at BU or, wherever BC, he's going to do it. But for the girls, it was like, no, just go to school and you can play wherever you're going to play and it'll be what it'll be. And I see that difference. It's something that has been challenging for me to see sometimes, because it's like we want our boys to play at this high level, but our girls, we just want them to get the education to move through it. It's like, why is there a difference? So I think you see that. I don't know if it would be seen as, and I hate saying this, but as socially acceptable for girls to pass up an opportunity, to go to a 4-year college, to go to a 2-year college and then transfer in. They'd be like, why are you doing that?
Right.
Whereas for the boys, it's like, oh yeah, well, he's doing that so he can get to Cornell. So I just think we're in that mentality that we're just not quite there yet. Although it's becoming a little bit more. You're seeing some girls that maybe go to one program and they're like, I want to play at a higher level. I want to go and I want to transfer to a different program and go win a national championship.
I've had 2 girls PG now.
Yeah.
And so, that's definitely different. It definitely is unique. And, but, I think that's an opportunity, especially, the junior college. The only reason I look at the junior college is, right now, we're dealing with so many Americans who are hurting so much financially. Yes. And, people who, I think that's one of the things that we're not talking enough about is, yes, we are dealing with life and death issues, but we're also dealing with life and death issues with people who can't afford to,
yes.
Feed their kids right now. Mm-hmm. And, I was talking to one of the US Lacrosse, top executives yesterday, and, telling me people are asking to get a $30 refund back because they need that for meals.
Yeah.
That's crazy
it's
stuff.
Real. Yeah.
It's real. But I just wanted to ask that. I thought that was interesting. You worked with Team USA.
Yeah.
And you worked with Team USA for a long time. Mm-hmm. As a coach. What is it like working with that level of elite talent?
It's amazing. The entire experience, even though when you're in it, like I said, there's always things that you're like, God, I wish we could change this or this. But when I look back at my 8 years with Team USA, absolutely unbelievable. The
2 gold medals.
2 gold medals, pretty pumped about that. But even with them, I mean, it's more the people. I just think, today I was texting with one of the current players in the U.S. national team, and the fact that I just text with her, and it's like, that's a really neat thing, or that we shared some of those moments on the field. One of my biggest, I can say this, my first stint, I went in and I remember I'm like, oh, I'm going to go coach this team that had just came off a gold medal win. Are they going to listen to me? Will they listen to me as the attacking coach? And I had that.
And a lot of them are college coaches.
They sure are. And everyone lets you know it. But it was really neat because that insecurity was so quickly dissipated, because they were like, okay, if you commit to helping me get better, I'm all in. And so as soon as I would talk to some of them about, hey, did you see the game this way? If you just did this little move, do you see these openings and how they present themselves? All of a sudden, these players that are at the top of their game are coming to you being like, hey, what if we did this? What do you think about this? And it's really neat. And it's so fun because it challenges you to be more creative. It challenges you to kind of stretch yourself. there are also moments it challenges you as a coach because, you know, it's one thing when you're coaching your own team and they know your lingo and you know what you recruited. It's another thing when you have kids from Syracuse, from Maryland, from Stony Brook, from, you know, everywhere, and they're all taught different things. And you're trying, Carolina, obviously, some of my favorite kiddos right down there. But it's like you have all these kids and they're taught so differently. And now you have to try to get them to speak the same language.
Right.
So it is a challenge. That was the most challenging of seeing where everyone's mental game was and bringing it to the same place.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think one of the biggest roles is it's very much that Herb Brooks role with the 1980 U.S. Olympic team is finding the right mixture of the people involved, not just the greatest players, but the people who could work together towards that common goal.
Yeah, and even with that, like we knew with our teams that we had, we took heat. Every coaching staff's going to take heat. Jenny's taking it now. She knows it. Everyone takes a little bit of that. Well, how could you not take this player? How could you take this? And at the end of the day, yeah, you need the people that can score the goals, but we also needed the people that would be okay coming off the bench. And you needed the people that would be okay being a veteran who maybe didn't play as many minutes, but she taught the younger one what was needed. You know, that they could mentor. I know when I loved having Marie McCool, and she was so young in the process when we were working with her, she needed some of those older veterans that could be like, hey kid, you're going to have a bad game, brush it off, move on, and let's go. And you need everyone to fit into different roles. And if you do the job right, it works. And it works not just with the gold medal, although that is ultimate what you want to do, but you also walk away having this experience where you're like, God, that was fun. And I wish it wasn't over.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing because, you know, I never got the invite to try out for Team USA. I wanted to try out for Team USA. And so just to put on that, you know, listening to Anson Dorrance talk about what it was like for him to win the first, you know, the world championship when he had the team, I think back in 91 or whatever it was. And, you know, even this is prior to the 99ers. And winning a world championship, and you know, listening to John Danowski and you know, coaches like you, it's just such a privilege, and you know, it's exciting. It's a fun thing.
Well, hey Dave, I got cut 3 times, so I tried out for 3 times. I kept coming back. They kept being like, Liz, come back to tryouts. I kept going. I kept getting cut. So it was one of those things I actually laugh about sometimes. I'm like, you guys cut me 3 times, and then I coached you. This will be great.
Well, my daughter Victoria, she sent me a text today, and she sent it to our whole family, and basically, I guess it was this. She got this off Instagram. It says, anyone notice what happened in the Last Dance documentary when Michael Jordan got cut from the varsity team in 10th grade? His mom told him to work harder all summer. She didn't call the coach, didn't call the athletic director, didn't call the superintendent to complain. Take notes.
Yep. I love it.
You know, but it's the same thing. It's like, you know, my mom never said, she's like, yeah, you didn't get a tryout. Go do something else.
Exactly. Go figure it out. Find your way. And like every time I got cut, I call my parents, and two of the 3 times I remember crying about it. And I was just disappointed because it so much is amped up about it. And I remember calling, and my parents were just like, you weren't good enough. I was like, there it is. Okay. And move on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually had that with my youngest daughter, where I actually cut my youngest daughter from one of our first Elevate teams. And
oh my goodness.
People thought I was insane. And I'm like, it's not fair. She wasn't good enough. And that afternoon, I looked in the backyard. She was on the pitch back in the backyard, basically saying, I'm going to work at it.
Yeah.
Best thing that ever happened to her.
Yeah.
And people thought I was insane, but it is what it is. But you talk about great people. I know you mentioned like Team USA, great people. You and I have a common friend that is literally, you know, I have 3 sisters and I love my sisters, but I have another sister from a different mother, and that's Kim Hillier. She is literally one of my favorite people in the world. We tell each other how much we love each other. What's it like working with Kimmy?
I mean, she is just a great human. I was actually texting her this morning. Like loyal to a fault. I just love her so much. It was one of those things where we had so many laughs that when we would work together, like she picked up on things so quickly in terms of like knowing me. And I think that was one of the things that I so much appreciated her. as she was like working to build her brand and her style of coaching, that one, she listened to the things that I brought to her, being like, hey, we could do this better, whatever. But then she was always watching, always paying attention, and being like, and thinking what I would think. And that was really cool.
Plus, she's a competitive freak.
Oh my God. I love it. Like, I like doing a little trash talking in a good way, in a fun way with the kids. And Kim was like right there. She's like, you got this. Come on. I'm going to beat you. But like, and her whole family, I mean, from Janine, her mom and dad, like, they're just the most genuine, kind-hearted people that, like, as soon as you'd walk out to practice, like, as soon as I'd walk into the office, it was just like, let's have a day. Like, let's have a day. It's filled with love. I think when you say that, it's just the perfect thing, because I mean, I feel so lucky to have her in my life. I feel lucky that I got her off the island for a couple of years, you know, never easy with you Islanders, get her off there. But it was, I mean, I'm thankful to have her in my life. It's just awesome. And I'm so happy with what she and Joe are doing down there at Stony Brook. And, you know, I know the relationship she has with kids. I mean, they are very fortunate to have Kim in their life. It's awesome.
They are. She's just literally one of my favorite people in the world. So as we end this up, we end the Elevate Academy, we always finish with a series of questions. So one question that we've added that, and once again, I don't tell any of the guests what.
I know. I'm like, what are these questions?
The first question is, crazy times right now, but if you have to find a silver lining in all of this, what's your silver lining?
Oh, the amount of time I'm spending with my family. Like, I mean, it's from years of coaching when I feel like I was pawning off my kids or not seeing Katie and doing all, like.
Well, Katie's a college coach too.
Yeah, she's a college coach too. So we were like.
Sometimes your schedules would probably be completely off the track.
Oh, it was crazy. It was crazy. And then when you do see each other, you're just complaining about something. And it's just, I think the positive mindset you have to have a positive mindset right now in all of this. So like that, as well as the time spent with my kids and like watching them grow, it's definitely, I'm very thankful for it.
Well, you have babies. So the one thing I said this the other day is, you know, you can't believe how fast it goes. And everyone tells you it goes so fast. It goes faster than you can even imagine. So I'm glad that you're spending time with them and able to get them. The next thing is, we have a question from Tommy Ryan. Okay. And it's a question to you. And Tommy, who I told you, he went through a horrible time where he lost his 5-year-old son. And he's actually writing a book right now. And the book is about to be, I think it's going to be released in July. And it's called Chosen Suffering. And I can't wait to get the book because knowing Tommy, it's going to be amazing. But he wanted to know, he said, ask Liz, what's the toughest thing she's ever been through and how'd she get through it?
I feel like I have two. From the most personal, I would say one of my college teammates was murdered during my time at George Mason. And I still am an emotional person. Everyone that knows me knows that I cry on a dime. But yeah, I do. I like the tears come at the end of every season, but that was really tough. I was going into my junior year and one of my roommates from a year older was killed. And it was a really emotional time. And it was a time period when I wasn't comfortable talking about a lot of things. I just bottled everything up. I felt my coach was Jenny Grapp, who's now at Cornell. And I've apologized to her at length because of how I acted. And I had a really rough 6 months. I made some really bad choices personally, health-wise. And I always give credit to Kim Simons, who is the former Georgetown coach. She wrote me a letter telling me that I was stronger than I thought I was in a moment I didn't think I was, and I got through it. And I kind of just, between that and my friends, I got through it, came out the other side. And so I think that was so challenging because I was just so immature and I handled things really badly in that moment. Right. So I think that was probably the hardest personally. You know, professionally, losing my job at BU was tough. You know, I love the program. I love what I built there. I love all my alums. I still do. And it took me less than 6 months. So I can definitely say I've learned. I had a couple days, I had 2 or 3 days where it was really hard. And I think that was because you're being told you're not good enough or you're not what we want. And that's hard to hear. But I actually credit all of my players and the alums of what I told them. Like that in years, I'm like, hey, you don't get to pout, figure it out and move on. And so I was actually—
You had to swallow your own medicine.
Well, and I did. Like, I kind of actually kept telling myself that. I was like, wait, you tell them this, you better move on pretty quickly. And I would actually say I did. And again, it's no disrespect. I love BU. I support it. I promote them. those student athletes, I love those families. I love every one of those families that I ever, worked with. They're great people. It was just hard.
Yeah.
But I also,
and this isn't me just patting you on the back and kissing your ass, but I think everyone was surprised. It really was, when you took a coach who not only was winning, but was having such a positive impact. And I look at that. I mean, when you look at certain sports, the money sports, when you look at basketball and football, if you're not winning, you're out.
Right.
You're out. Other sports that are the non-revenue sports, as long as you're graduating your kids, if you're winning, if the kids are having a positive experience, that's great. And you were doing all those things. So I think that's why I think a lot of us were shocked.
That was tough. But I also think, I'm so supportive of Lauren Morton there. She's one of my own who's coaching the team. So I want them to do well. Ryan's still there.
Awesome.
Love the kid.
Yeah.
So I think professionally that was hard because that was the first time I ever had that situation.
Right.
But then it was interesting. I also had that moment of like smack out of it. A lot of people lose their jobs, move on. You are no different than other people and you're not more important. And when you have those moments of like, wake up, it's a lot easier to move on. And again, like get moving, get busy.
Absolutely.
So it's good.
So now the next thing is you have to ask a question. Our next guest coming on Friday is Tom Scott. Tom's a college football player, one of my teammates from Brown University. And not only is he a great guy, but Tom and his other friend, Tom First, who also played lacrosse at Brown, Tom founded a little company called Nantucket Nectars.
So cool.
And did an unbelievable job. They ended up selling the company. And but they were Tom from Nantucket Nectars. And he's going to come on talking about business and life. He runs a great program called the Nantucket Project right now.
Yeah,
which is
I know.
game changing. And I went as a guest of Tom's to the Nantucket Project, and it literally blew my mind. I met some people that I'm still in touch with today. So what's your question of Tom Scott?
So it's interesting with someone in business. My question would be, what was that bridge, that thing that made them go from idea to making it happen? Because I always look at that and there's always that insecurity of like, oh my God, can we do it? What if it fails? And you have all these questions, but what was it that like gave them that we're doing it? Like put the money down, let's go, let's move.
I'm excited to ask him that question. Yeah. We'll get to him on Friday. The last question, and this is what the Elevate Academy is about. It's about bringing people together who can pay it forward, who can give advice, who, even a lot of the things that you're talking about. I want a parent, I want a coach, I want a student athlete, I want a business person to listen to the things that you were saying, and let's put those things into action. That's what's important. So we always end with this. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten, and who gave it to you?
I don't necessarily know. I feel like I've been told this a lot by people, but it happened when I was young and I don't know who first said it. Follow your gut. It's talking to you for a reason. And I know some people that isn't their way, and that's fine. But I have always done that. I find it so important for me. If my gut tells me to go, even if it may end up being wrong, it doesn't matter, but my gut tells me that something is exciting and that something is worthwhile, or that something is do not do it. Stay away, run.
What you just said is, I think, is so important, especially as the dad of 3 girls and coaching all girls and coaching high school girls, et cetera. I listen to a lot of women's podcasts. And one of the women's podcasts I was listening to was all about women's intuition and trusting your gut to not let you get into dangerous situations. And do not let social pride and social norms get you into a decision that could put yourself in danger. And what they did is they interviewed 5 women who all had a gut instinct about something that they thought might happen. And they all kind of like, well, that guy doesn't look like he's a murderer, or that guy doesn't look like he would mug me or hurt me or do anything to me. And all 5 women didn't trust their gut. And it goes through the stories of what happened to all of them, is that you have that instinct. You have it. Trust it.
Yes.
For good and for bad.
Yes. I think that is so crucial for women, especially for young women, is that there's a nervousness. There's a nervousness to trust their gut, because it's like, what if I'm wrong? What if I get yelled at? What if it saves your life?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
The one thing too is, and that's so important too, is we always talk about the whole complete person.
Mm-hmm.
Body, mind, game, life, everything. So, the mental side of it, it's also, mental health awareness, and global Lyme awareness. Those two things I have to give shout outs to. I have to thank all our frontline workers out there, especially our nurses and doctors and everyone out there who makes our hospitals run. We appreciate it. But Liz, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate everything you had to say, everything you had to share with us.
Thank you.
You've been a good friend, and keep elevating in everyone that you're doing. Take care of those two little kiddos. Say hi to Katie for me, and enjoy the rest of this week and enjoy this beautiful day that we have.
I will. Thank you. And keep up what you're doing. This is awesome. They are so lucky to have you down there. The positive energy, you can feel it everywhere, even though we're through computer screens. I think it's so important these days, and keep it up.
Do me a favor. Let the NCAA know that the college Division I coaches need to hear from them, and they should be able to speak to all these kids.
I know.
So put in the word. I know Janine Tucker was fighting for it too.
Yep.
They need to be able to be speaking. Now is the time that we need to hear from them more than anything.
I totally agree with you.
So awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the show. We'll see everyone on Friday with Tom Scott, the founder of Nantucket Neckers, and the co-founder of Nantucket Neckers, and also the co-founder of Nantucket Project. We'll see you on Friday. Keep elevating, everyone. Have a great day.